Hello, everyone. Welcome. And thank you for joining us for today's webinar on the Affordable Connectivity Program for Broadband Internet on Tribal and Rural Lands. My name is Linda Williams, and I am a Community Outreach and Training Manager with Consumer Action. And on behalf of the entire staff at Consumer Action, welcome. I am so excited that we all can meet today to discuss the ACP, the benefits of the Affordable Connectivity Program, and why it is so crucial for millions of consumers. See, if you use the internet daily, streaming movies, playing games on gigabyte speed connection, it may seem hard for you to imagine a world or a city or area in the United States of America where that is impossible. But it's actually a reality for many people. Now, while rural Americans have made enormous gains in adopting digital technology over the past decade, and they've narrowed somewhat the digital gap, according to a recent poll by Pew, rural adults are less likely than suburban adults to have home broadband and less likely to own a smartphone, tablet, or traditional computer. Broadband is also critical for Indian country, but it's often unavailable. In 2019, the American Indian Policy Institute found that 18% of tribal reservation residents have no internet. And even where broadband is available, the cost is often a barrier. You see, tribal and rural communities, like other communities, they must have broadband access for education, work, and it is crucial for healthcare. Now it may be a little more accessible via the Affordable Connectivity Program, but let's take a look and discuss some of the issues that's involved with making this accessible to rural and tribal lands. So, what is the enhanced tribal benefit under the ACP, and what tribal lands qualify for this enhanced benefit? Lifeline, ACP, what's the difference? And can you stack the benefits? Are there any consumer protection offered by the ACP? And if so, what are those protections? How consumers apply for the benefits? Who are the providers? Are consumers allowed to choose a service plan that best meet their needs and budget? And what about consumers having credit issues or past due balances left up with a provider? Are they left behind? And what is this I hear about a grant program for frontline community based organizations? Can agencies joining us this call today apply for the program? If so, how? I don't know about you, but I want to hear more about the grant program. So I'm taking notes. Are you ready for answers? We're all in for a treat today because we have three guest speakers here ready to break it all down for us. Derik Goatson is here. Derik is a legal advisor in the Office of Native Affairs Policy for the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. Olivia Wen is here. Olivia is a staff attorney with the NCLC, the National Consumer Law Center. Tiffany Johnson is here. Tiffany is a manager of communications lifeline programs at USAC, the Universal Service Administrative Company. We're bringing the fire today, y'all, so buckle up and get ready. Now, before I get into the presentation, I need to go over a few housekeeping items and update you on what's happening at Consumer Action. But first, this webinar is presented with funding from AT&T, and we want to thank them for being sponsors of this webinar. Now, this is a 90-minute webinar. You will receive a link to the PowerPoint slides used by our guest professionals no later than tomorrow afternoon. We love hearing from you, so at the end of all presentations, Outreach Trainer Nelson Sandy Aubrey is going to facilitate a question and answer segment. This is where we get to hear from you, so if you have any questions for our guest speakers, please don't let them leave here without answering your question. Use the question function to ask your questions. At the end of the training, you will receive a short survey about today's webinar. We value your feedback as we work diligently to improve our service to you. So if you have a comment, a suggestion, or dare I say a compliment, we would love to hear from you. So please complete the survey. Also, as a bonus for attending today, you will receive a certificate of completion. How about that? And AFC professionals, you will receive that code tomorrow afternoon with the PowerPoint slides that will allow you to claim your credit. So let me tell you about what's happening at Consumer Action. What do we do at Consumer Action? Whereas it states right there on the screen, through education and advocacy, we fight for strong consumer rights and policies that promote fairness for all consumers, but especially for underrepresented communities nationwide. At Consumer Action, we are extremely proud of all of our work, but we are especially proud of our COVID-19 educational project. So when you're on our website, click on that little middle burgundy link, and you will land on our COVID-19 project page. There, you will find resources that you can share with your client communities that will help them navigate the COVID-19 financial crisis. You click on the words webinars, and you will land on our YouTube channel where you can review some of our past and very popular webinars. Now, I want to tell you about some multilingual guides that we created. We have created several guides that can help, that you can use to help you raise awareness about low cost internet programs. Our Lifeline and Affordable Connectivity Guide introduces two federal programs, Lifeline and the ACP, that offer discounts on home broadband wireless data service for qualifying low-income and moderate-income families. The guides come in 5 different languages. They are free, so go to our website, download them, and share them with the communities that you serve. Getting Up to Speed is another guide we created, and it's available as a download. This is a fact sheet that's going to explain more about broadband, including the importance of broadband, the benefits, availability, and pricing. So while you're on our website, don't leave without downloading one or all of those guides. Now, let me go over the roadmap so you'll know where we're headed today. At Consumer Action, we believe in making learning fun. So we open up each and every training, whether it's in person or virtual, by testing your knowledge on the training topic with our most popular game, How Much Do You Know? Today, we have 3 true or false questions related to the Affordable Connectivity Program. Following the game, I will introduce you to our guest professionals in the order that they will be presenting. The question and answer session led by Nelson Santiago will follow. I will come back, tell you how to donate to Consumer Action, and wrap up. So you ready? Are you ready to play the game? So let's launch the first question, please. This is how the game is played. We have 3 true or false questions. I will read the questions. You will use the question function to answer that question. I will close the poll. Then we will look at the percentage of you to get the question correct or incorrect, and I will give you the correct answer. So roll out the first question, please. So, true or false? Rural adults are less likely than suburban adults to have home broadband and less likely than urbanites to own a smartphone. Is that true or is that false? Don't overthink it. Come on. Wow, the numbers are moving. Okay, let's close the poll. Let's look at the results. Wow, 76% of you think it's true, 24% say it's false. 76%, you've been listening this morning, right? Because that is absolutely true. A study conducted by Pew Research Center analyzing the digital divide between rural, urban, and suburban Americans revealed that rural Americans remain less likely than suburban adults to have home broadband and less likely to own a smartphone, tablet, or computer. Now, a copy of that study will be included in the handouts that you will receive tomorrow, so you can take your time and study it and go over it. You're doing great. Let's roll out the next question. Okay, true or false? The American Indian Policy Institute, AIPI, found that 18% of tribal reservation residents have no internet access. Is that true or is that false? Don't overthink it. Come on, don't overthink it. Okay, let's stop. Let's close the poll and take a look. 68% think that is a true statement. 32% think that is a false statement. Well, 32%, you are wrong. That is a true statement. In 2019, the American Indian Policy Institute, AIPI, found that 18% of tribal reservation residents have no internet access. That is true. Okay, you're doing great. You're doing great. Let's roll out the last question. Okay, The last question, true or false? 2/3 of unconnected households have access to broadband services, but they are offline primarily because they can't afford to connect. Is that true or is that false? Don't overthink it. Okay, let's close the poll and take a look at the results. That is actually a true statement. So 89%, you are absolutely correct. According to a report published by the Education Superhighway, there are 28.2 million households in the United States without high-speed broadband, and mainly because they cannot afford the service. You did very well. Thank you for playing the game. Again, these articles will be made available to you no later than tomorrow afternoon as handouts, and you can take your time and go through them. Now, let me introduce you to our guest speakers. Derik Goatson is a legal advisor in the Office of Native Affairs and Policy at the Federal Communications Commission. He previously worked at a law firm that specialized in representing Indian tribes in all legal matters. He is an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation for Page, Arizona. He completed law school at the University of Colorado, Boulder in 2017. Given his background in education, he is interested in community and economic development among rural and minority communities nationwide. Welcome, Derik. Our next speaker is Olivia Wen. Olivia has been an attorney at the National Consumer Law Center for over 20 years. NCLC is a nonprofit focused on using consumer law to promote economic security for low-income and other disadvantaged people. Olivia focuses on policies and programs that protect low-income consumers' access to essential utility services, including energy, water, and telecom. Olivia works on the federal low-income housing energy assistance program, weatherization, Lifeline, the Affordable Connectivity Program, low-income household water affordability programs, and intervenes in federal and state utility commission proceedings in matters affecting low-income utility consumers and protection. She is the co-author of the 5th edition of NCLC's Manual Access to Utility Services and co-author of The Right of Utility Consumers. Olivia serves on the board of the Universal Service Administrative Company and is advisor for the National Energy and Utility Affordability Commission. She also serves on the FCC Commission Consumer Advisory Committee. Welcome, Olivia. Tiffany Johnson manages communications for Lifeline and the Affordability Connectivity Program, including state and federal partnerships. Prior to this role, Tiffany served in numerous capacities at USAC over the last 8 years, focusing on program integrity, operations and program, and execution for the Lifeline program. Now that I have introduced you to our fabulous guest speakers, I'm going to turn it over to Derik so you can learn a little bit more about the programs that we talked about earlier and get some answers to those questions I asked early on. So Derik, you should have control of the screen.
Give me a moment. Okay, yes, I have control. Thank you, Linda. Hello, everyone. I am thankful for the opportunity to speak to you today. I will be providing an overview of the Affordable Connectivity Program. For convenience, I will be referring to the Affordable Connectivity Program as ACP or simply as the program. As we begin, there are 3 basic questions that I would like to pose that serve as the guiding framework for my presentation today. These 3 guiding questions distill the crucial components of ACP for potential applicants and outreach partners so they can take advantage of its offered benefits. These 3 questions are as follows. First, what is the benefit that ACP provides? Second, who is eligible to receive the benefit? Third, how can eligible households apply to receive the benefit? Here is a list of the items that I will be discussing concerning the ACP and its features. First, we will review the program and its design. Second, we will discuss who is eligible to receive the ACP benefits. Third, we will review the consumer protections embedded in the program. Fourth, we will discuss our ongoing outreach efforts, how you can become an outreach partner of ACP, and how you may receive grants or additional support to fund or facilitate your outreach activities. Lastly, I will provide important contact information and informational resources to help you address any future questions you may have concerning ACP. The Affordable Connectivity Program is a long-term FCC program that Congress created through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Congress directed the Commission to issue rules and oversee the administration of the program. The Universal Service Administrative Company, or USAC, administers the ACP. The ACP aims to ensure that all households in our country can afford the broadband internet access they need for work, school, and more for years to come. There are two kinds of benefits that ACP offers to households. Households receive the benefits in the form of a discount to their monthly broadband internet bill and to the cost of a one-time purchase of a connected device. A household is defined as any individual or group of individuals who are living together at the same address as one economic unit. A household may consist of related or unrelated persons, so long as they contribute to or share income and expenses. A single dwelling unit or residence may have more than one household living in it. Children under the age of 18 living with their parents or legal guardians are considered to be a part of the same household as their parents or guardians. Each household is only allowed one ACP benefit and one connected device. Both kinds of benefits are aimed to assist low-income households. Depending on where a household is located, a household may receive a discount of either up to $30 a month or up to $75 a month to their local monthly broadband bill. Only households that are located on qualifying tribal lands may receive up to $75 a month. Concerning the device benefit, a one-time device discount of $100 is available for a connected device. A connected device is a laptop, desktop, or tablet purchased through an internet service provider who is participating in ACP. A mobile phone is not considered a connected device and therefore is not eligible for the one-time device discount. Households must pay a modest copayment of at least $10, but no more than $50 to receive the one-time benefit. Please note that households receive both kinds of benefits from an internet service provider and not from the FCC or USAC. Internet providers are not required to participate in ACP, but elect to participate in the program. Accordingly, households need to contact their preferred local provider directly to see if they are participating providers and what ACP benefits they are offering, if any. The Commission uses the definition of tribal lands in the ACP as the same as it uses in its Lifeline program. Accordingly, a household is eligible to receive the enhanced $75 benefit as long as the household is located on tribal lands, regardless of the tribal enrollment status of any persons living in the household. The codified definition includes any federally recognized tribe's reservation, pueblo, or colony. It also includes former reservations in Oklahoma, Alaska Native regions established pursuant to the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, Indian allotments, Hawaiian homelands, and any land approved as tribal for the purposes of the Lifeline program or the ACP by the FCC's Office of Native Affairs and Policy and the Wireline Competition Bureau. As I previously stated, the ACP benefits are aimed to assist low-income households nationwide. For purposes of the program, a low-income household is defined in a number of ways, which means that households can become eligible to receive ACP benefits in various ways. There are two basic ways a household can become eligible for ACP. First, based on the household's yearly income, and second, based on the household's participation in a qualifying government program. A household whose yearly income is at or below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines is ACP eligible. The federal poverty guidelines are updated at the beginning of each year by the Department of Health and Human Services. The qualifying income amount of the poverty guidelines depends on the total number of people in a household. A chart showing the 2022 poverty guidelines is available on the Department of Health and Human Services website. A household can also become ACP eligible if a member of the household meets at least one of the criteria listed below. In contrast to the federal poverty guidelines, where all members of a household determine eligibility for ACP, under the participation requirement of ACP, only one member of the household, regardless of age, needs to participate in a qualifying government program for the entire household to become ACP eligible. The qualifying federal assistance programs include the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, Medicaid, Federal Public Housing Assistance, Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, Special Supplemental Nutritional Program for Women, Infants, and Children, or simply WIC, or the Lifeline program, which is a FCC program that is administered by USAC. If a member of the household participates in a tribal-specific program, such as a Bureau of Indian Affairs government general assistance program, tribal temporary assistance for needy families, or TAMFT, or the food distribution program on Indian reservations, they are eligible. At least one child in a household who participates in the National School Lunch Program or the School Breakfast Program, including if a child attends a community eligible provision school or SIP school, is ACP eligible. If at least one person in a household receives a Pell Grant for the current award year, they are eligible. If a person in a household receives veterans, pension, or survival benefit, they are eligible. If at least one person participates in a local internet provider's existing low-income program that has been approved by the Commission for ACP purposes, they are eligible. Given the numerous ways that households can become eligible for ACP, the Commission has created rules that encourages as many households as possible to enroll in the ACP program. There are two basic ways to apply for the ACP. You can apply online by going through our website, www.affordableconnectivity.gov, or you can apply by printing out and mailing out a completed application along with copies of the required supplemental documentation. If needed, you can mail your application in. If you submit an application by mail, you will receive updates by mail regarding your application status, such as if you need to submit additional information or documents for approval. If approved, a written letter will be mailed to you confirming your approval. Although you can apply by mail, we highly recommend that you apply online to minimize delay and facilitate communication in your application process. Some internet providers may have an alternative application that they may ask you to complete. If necessary, the service provider will instruct you on how to complete the alternative application. All eligible households must apply for the program through USAC and must contact a participating provider to select a service plan once their application has been approved by USAC. If you want to apply the benefit to internet service with your current provider, you will need to contact your provider directly after your application has been approved and notified them. As I mentioned earlier, not all internet providers participate in ACP. Please contact directly your current internet provider or other local preferred provider to determine if they are offering ACP benefits in your area. The Commission maintains a comprehensive list of all participating providers on its website, which organizes participating providers by states. The list also indicates whether the provider is offering the monthly benefit, the one-time device benefit, or both. The ACP has rules to protect eligible households and to ensure that they can receive the benefit, as long as they match with a participating provider. The rules protect Affordable Connectivity Program recipients by empowering consumers to choose the service plan that best meets their needs, and including a plan that they may already be on, ensuring consumers have access to supported broadband services regardless of their credit status, prohibiting providers from excluding consumers with past due balances or prior debt from enrolling in the program, preventing consumers from being forced into more expensive or lower quality plans in order to receive the ACP benefit, allowing ACP recipients to switch providers or broadband service offerings, and providing a dedicated FCC process for ACP complaints. The Commission has a dedicated ACP pathway within its existing FCC Consumer Complaint Center about ACP complaints. There is also a dedicated hotline for ACP complaints, which is 877-384-2575. Once a complaint has been filed by a household, the provider has 30 days to send a response to that complaint. The FCC is mobilizing people and organizations to help share important consumer information about the new Affordable Connectivity Program. The Commission's outreach efforts focus on encouraging households to enroll in ACP, with a particular emphasis on reaching people of color, persons with disabilities, persons who live in rural or tribal areas, and others who are or have been historically underserved, marginalized, or adversely affected by persistent poverty or inequality. If you are interested in requesting a speaker to further your outreach efforts, you can send a speaker request to acpspeakers@fcc.gov. If you are interested in becoming an outreach partner, you can send an email to outreach@fcc.gov. There we go. The FCC has created a toolkit of downloadable ACP social media images, fact sheets, and other outreach content and materials that can be customized for consumer awareness and outreach campaigns, given your community needs. You can visit our webpage, www.fcc.gov/ACP Consumer Outreach Toolkit, and download the materials. The materials include infographics, fact sheets, flyers, handouts, social media templates of various sorts, draft press releases, and audio files of public service announcements. These also include specific announcements concerning our enhanced tribal benefit. Although over 13 million Americans households are enrolled in ACP, there are still millions of eligible households that have not taken advantage of this opportunity. To bridge this enrollment gap, the FCC established the Affordable Connectivity Outreach Grant Program to raise awareness and to encourage enrollment in ACP. The grant program will provide funding to select outreach organizations to fund their outreach activities in their local communities. Government and non-government organizations are eligible to apply for funding, including tribal, state, and local governments. The grant application review process will prioritize applicants who target underserved low-income households and communities with low ACP enrollment rates. And many of these communities are often tribal communities. A notice of funding opportunity will be released in the coming months with instructions on how you can apply for the grant program. The Commission has recently established 2 temporary pilot programs to supplement ACP by providing trusted third-party organizations with additional tools to facilitate ACP enrollment. One such program is the ACP Navigator pilot program. This is a 1-year pilot that will provide a limited number of neutral, trusted third-party entities, such as local, tribal, and state governments, with access to the national verifier for purposes of assisting households in applying for ACP. The other program is Your Home, Your Internet pilot program. This 1-year pilot program is designed to increase ACP awareness among recipients of federal housing assistance by helping such recipients with the ACP application process. Eligible housing entities may apply for the pilot program, including local, tribal, and state governments. Tribally designated housing entities are strongly encouraged to apply. Here is a list of the resources to help you become familiar with ACP. If you have any questions regarding the program, you can call the ACP Support Center. The Support Center is available 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Derik. In order to, let's turn to Olivia Wen so we can learn a little bit more about consumer protections and stacking, how to stack these different programs. Olivia, you should have control.
Terrific, I do. Thank you. And I should disclose at the top, as was noted in my brief bio, I'm a staff attorney at the National Consumer Law Center, and I also serve on the board of directors for the Universal Service Administrative Company, USAC, but I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of the Universal Service Administrative Company or their board of directors. So I'm solely speaking to you today in my capacity as a staff attorney at the National Consumer Law Center. So that said, I'm going to skip over some of the slides where the material has already been covered, and hopefully these slides will be made available to you afterwards. But if not, my email is on the last slide, and I'll be happy to share these with you. Okay. So this is a little bit about who NCLC is. Our focus is on low-income households, and I work in the unit that focuses on access to essential utility services, and we consider broadband an essential utility service. I think we know why broadband is important, which is why I think you're logging in today and spending the afternoon with us. The three reasons, or three of the three top reasons why people don't have broadband access: cost, which was covered in one of the questions; access, the infrastructure, is the infrastructure there, and having enough digital skills to really use the broadband internet. What I will be talking to you today about, the Affordable Connectivity Program, really sort of focuses on this first bullet, the cost barrier. We get into a little bit about the devices as well, but it's mostly the cost barrier. The quick recap: for households that are not on tribal lands, it's an up to $30 a month off of broadband internet, but there are two categories that get the enhanced benefit. As Derik had mentioned, those households living on tribal lands can receive up to $75 a month for broadband service, and this is a stay tuned for more. In certain high-cost areas, households in certain high-cost areas will also have access to an up to $75 a month benefit. This is where the Affordable Connectivity Program intersects with the Department of Commerce's $40 billion in infrastructure funding will intersect their BEAD program, B-E-A-D. The devices benefit through the ACP. Just want to highlight that there is the mandatory copay. The household has to pay between $10 and $50 for their laptop, desktop, or tablet. It's provided by the participating provider, so it's not like you can go into any store and apply this benefit like a coupon. It's through the participating Affordable Connectivity Program provider. It's a one-time, one per household benefit. And here's something to keep in mind: if the household has received a device under the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, the EBB, which is the precursor to the Affordable Connectivity Program, that triggers the one-time, one per household benefit. They can't receive another device under ACP. As noted, the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program is the precursor to the ACP. So you're going to see, if you're familiar with EBB, it's a similar application process, similar but not the same eligibility criteria. And both EBB and ACP are built upon the Lifeline program platform. So again, a very similar type of application process, and some of the functionality that I'll be highlighting is also available in that Lifeline program, also administered by USAC. Lifeline is an up to $9.25 a month benefit. It can go towards a bundle, a voice and data bundle. It can go to broadband only. It can also go to voice only, but it's a much smaller amount benefit. Here are some key points. You can have both the Affordable Connectivity Program and Lifeline. As Ms. Williams noted, you can stack these benefits. They're two separate benefit programs, but they can be combined. Households have a lot of control. They can choose an ACP provider and a different Lifeline provider, or they can choose the same provider. Households can choose to participate in only one of those programs, only ACP or only Lifeline. It's up to the household. But to be clear, you can only have one of each kind of benefit. So you can't end up with two ACP benefits. I'm going to slow down a little bit on the consumer protections, because actually this is what makes the Affordable Connectivity Program quite unique. A customer that is enrolled in the Affordable Connectivity Program actually enjoys enhanced consumer protections in the marketplace. So things that may have been a barrier outside of the Affordable Connectivity Program are not a barrier to service. So providers can't use a credit check to say whether or not you can participate. And they can't use credit checks to limit households to only certain service options. A household in ACP is allowed to choose any service from a participating provider. So they can, it's full range within the marketplace with participating providers, a full range of options. There are no early termination fees. Customers can't be locked into a particular product. And they can change their minds about whether or not they want their Affordable Connectivity Program with a certain provider or a certain type of service offered. So they can change where their ACP benefit applies. And that's limited, to essentially once a month with certain exceptions. There's no mandatory waiting period. Before we had the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program and the Affordable Connectivity Program, some internet providers had low-income programs, but if you were already a subscriber, sometimes they made you wait a period before you can enroll in their low-income program. With ACP, there is no mandatory waiting period. Again, consumers have a lot of choice and agency within the Affordable Connectivity Program. So they are free to shop, try out products. The goal here is for the consumer to find a product that really best meets their household needs. It can be wired, it could be wireless. And again, there's that stacking option, which could happen with the Lifeline benefit. There is a uniform disconnection protection. So in order, households have to be behind for 90 days and be behind in payment of the ACP portion of the bill for 90 days before they're disconnected. So that means that there's 90 days essentially for that household to find a more affordable alternative before losing access to broadband service. For example, by enrolling with a product that's maybe $30 or less a month. So essentially a product 100% covered by the Affordable Connectivity Program benefit, or if on tribal lands, up to $75 a month. Prohibitions on the upselling, that pressure by a customer service agent to get a customer to choose a product that is more expensive and has more bells and whistles than they want. That's called upselling, and that's prohibited. Downselling, that's pressure on the customer who may want a particular product but be steered towards perhaps a cheaper product or a slower speed product. That's called downselling, and that's prohibited. Unfair deceptive acts and practices, just as a general category, are prohibited. And as noted, if a customer finds themselves experiencing any of these, a violation of any of these protections, there's a dedicated ACP complaints page. This is a little bit faint, but there are two ways to figure out who the participating providers are. The Universal Service Administrative Company has a Companies Near Me tool where you can enter a zip code or your city and state, select the type of program you're looking for, ACP or Lifeline, and it's going to pull up a list of participating providers based on that search term. The second way is if you go to the FCC, the Federal Communications website, they've got a website page listing by state the participating providers in a state, the types of service they offer, and whether or not they're participating in that the ACP device program. Not all providers participate. So this is a good way to see within a state who's participating in that portion of the program. Another thing that's unique about ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program, and Lifeline is that there is a central application point, and the national verifier has computer matching agreements with certain programs. So if you have a household that participates in Medicaid or federal public housing assistance, those databases are set up at the national level. So no matter what state you live in, they can check those databases, and so it can be a fairly quick determination of whether or not the household is eligible. And then in about half the states and territories, additional databases, state-run databases, SNAP and SSI may be also hooked up through this computer matching, which can also lead to a very quick eligibility determination. Another thing that's interesting about the Affordable Connectivity Program is that you can find out, they have a claims tracker. So you can sort of track on a weekly basis nationwide how many households are enrolled. You can check enrollment by state. You can see by zip code and county how many households have enrolled in the ACP program. And they have additional data that they track. So this is a powerful tool if you're doing outreach. But you can see sort of the popular programs like the age demographics. You can see by service type, like what people are choosing. You can see the eligibility criteria chosen, and you can see if subscribers are coming in based on their participation in Lifeline, if they've come in through the national verifier, if they're coming in through the provider's process. So it's a rough cut breakdown of the different entry points and who the subscribers are in the Affordable Connectivity Program. Again, really great for folks that are interested in doing outreach. I am trying to hit my next slide button, and I think I'm stuck. Hold on. Let me see. Oh, there I go. Whoops. As noted, there is going to be an outreach grant program, so funded community-based organizations, trusted community partners, anchor institutions within the community will soon be able to apply for a funded outreach grant program. In addition to the 2 pilot programs that Derik talked about, I just wanted to note, like, keep your eye on the Department of Commerce's NTIA's definition of high-cost areas for their infrastructure program, because that will be linked again to the Affordable Connectivity Program and an enhanced up to $75 a month for those customers in high-cost areas determined by the Department of Commerce's NTIA, National Telecommunications and Information Administration. Oh, it was a guess. Their program definition will trigger that extra enhanced benefit. So that is a stay tuned to be developed on the horizon, but I think that can really help certain communities in rural areas of the country. And so that is it for me, and happy to answer any questions. Again, that's my email if you'd like to connect with me afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you so very much. Now that you've learned about the programs, let's turn to Tiffany Johnson so she can tell us how we can apply it for those programs. Tiffany, you should have control.
Thank you, Linda. So for this next portion of the presentation, we wanted to walk you all through the steps that a consumer would take if they are applying for the program online. And so for the first page here, a consumer would first visit affordableconnectivity.gov. This is where they would land on our consumer-facing website, where there's key information about the program, again, how they qualify, different ways to apply. Again, Olivia had mentioned there's a location on our website called Companies Near Me, where they can search for participating providers that are offering service near them. And we also have some really helpful instructions that's translated in different languages if a consumer is completing an application either online or through the mail process and needs a little additional assistance. So the next step here would be to click the Apply Now button, which is just on this main banner image here, which will bring the consumer into our online application. As a first step in the process, the consumer will be asked to provide their information. So the next couple of screenshots here, we're just gonna walk through the information that is being requested. So the first step is entering in their full first and last legal name. It's important that they provide their official name as it appears on government issued documentation, for example, because later on in the process, the consumer may be asked to provide documentation, and we're going to check to see that the name on that official documentation matches with what they provided on their application. Next, on the same screen, the consumer will be asked to provide their date of birth. So from the drop-down menu here, they'll select the month of their date of birth and then type in the day and year. After that, they'll need to confirm how they'd like to verify their identity information. There's 3 different options available, which we'll go into further detail. So on the left-hand side here is what the consumer will see if they would like to provide the last 4 digits of their social security number. This is where they would enter in the last 4 digits. And one thing that we just wanted to flag is that for any consumer who does have a social security number, we recommend that they provide the last 4 of their social. There's a couple of reasons. It could lead to faster processing of their application, but Olivia had mentioned earlier that we have automated databases that we check to verify a consumer's eligibility. And those connections currently utilize some of the consumer's information, including the last 4 digits of their social security number. So if they have one and feel comfortable providing it, it could reduce the need to provide additional documentation later in the process. I did also want to reiterate that a social security number is not required to participate in the program. So of course, consumers have other options available if they do either don't have one or don't want to provide it. So the next option here is mostly for consumers who live on tribal lands who may have a tribal ID number. They can provide that. And then the third option is to provide an official document that can be used to confirm the consumer's name and their date of birth. So for this option, the consumer would just need to select which document they'd like to use. So for example, if they want to share a copy of their driver's license, they would select that option and then click Choose File. And then on the next screen here, the consumer will be asked to provide their home address. It's worth noting that the system will not allow the consumer to provide a PO box here. Later in the process, they will have the opportunity to provide a mailing address if it's different than their home address. But it's at this point where they need to identify where they physically reside. And as a final question here, the consumer will be asked if they are seeking to qualify for the program through a child or dependent. So they'll need to answer the question about whether if they qualify by themselves or through a child or dependent. After answering the question, they'll select the Next button. And now it's the point in the application where the consumer will be asked to create an account online. So first, they'll need to enter in a username of their choice. It can be their email address or a different username. It doesn't have to be an email address. And then they'll need to create a password. On the left-hand side of the screen here, you see these alert icons. As the consumer is typing in their password, these will change to green checkboxes as the consumer meets the required criteria. And then on the upper right-hand side of the screen here, you'll see that the consumer will next need to enter in their email address. If a consumer doesn't have an email address, they will need to create one to submit an online application. But they also have the opportunity to provide an alternate email by clicking the checkbox here. This, may be useful for consumers who maybe a family member or a social service agent is assisting them with the online application and would like to also receive notices about their application status. Next, the consumer has the ability to enter in a phone number if they'd like to provide it. Again, if they do provide one, we may send reminders or information about their application to that number. And I mentioned a little bit earlier that the consumer has the opportunity to provide a mailing address if it's different than their home address that they provided in the previous section. So they would just click this box and can enter in that information. And it's at this point where they can provide a PO box if they have that for their mailing address. Finally, the consumer is asked if they would like to receive notices about their application in English or Spanish. This is an optional question, so they can skip over this as well. And then finally, they'll need to select that they're not a robot, and then finally click that submit button. So after they've created their account, they will be brought to the sign-in page here. The information that you'll see on this screenshot and screenshots that follow will show all test data here, so it's not real consumer information. But we just wanted to show for purposes of this demonstration that after I've created my account, my username will automatically populate, but I will need to enter in my password and then click I'm not a robot again, and then finally click this sign in button. That will effectively log the consumer into the account that they've just created. And from here, they'll land on this consumer dashboard. The dashboard includes information on both the federal Lifeline program, which was mentioned earlier, as well as the Affordable Connectivity Program. It's in this section here where if a consumer has submitted an application, they'll be able to view their application and review some of the information, including the status, when the application expires, and when it was created. So we'll share more on what that looks like after we've created an application. But to get started and apply for the ACP, the consumer would select this Apply for ACP button. Next, the consumer needs to tell us how they qualify. They can select all that apply here. And for consumers who live on tribal lands, I did want to show right here, there's a category. It's the third from the bottom of the list. Consumers who qualify through one of the tribal specific programs and live on tribal lands can select this. And after selecting this option, a menu will appear with the tribal eligibility programs where the consumer will then select like the food distribution program on Indian reservations, for example. Similarly, if a consumer is attempting to qualify through a child or dependent, they would want to select this last option. And then they'll also be asked to provide the, we call it a benefit qualifying person. They'll need to enter in the child or dependent's information, similar to what they provided at the start of the application here. So after the consumer has selected how they qualify, they'll select next. And they'll get to this review your information page. This is really, at this point in the process, is where we really want the consumer to see this is the information that they submitted originally, and we want them to review it to make sure it's accurate. Again, this is all fake test data. This is not a real subscriber. But let's say Nancy, her last name is George's instead of George. She would just click edit and go back and update that information as needed. That applies to any of the information that's shown here. So after the consumer has confirmed that the information is correct, they need to check this box here to confirm that they consent for us to use their information to confirm that they qualify for the Affordable Connectivity Program. After clicking that box, they'll select this Submit button. And these next couple of screens I do want to share. So after they click Submit, we check the consumer's information against automated databases we have to confirm their identity, their address, and their eligibility. If we aren't able to confirm those utilizing those automated databases, the consumer may encounter some of these screenshots that follow in the presentation, where we would ask them to provide more information or documentation to confirm the information that is needed. And so in this first screenshot, the consumer is being asked to confirm their address. So this is something that may happen if a consumer lives on rural or tribal lands where maybe their home address isn't recognized as deliverable by the United States Postal Service. And so for that reason, we need them to utilize this mapping tool to pinpoint the location of their household. We realize many consumers may not be familiar with how to utilize a mapping tool. So we did want to call out, you can't see it here, but in this How to Find Your Address section, a consumer can click this plus sign here, which will expand the window, and they can view a very quick video on how to utilize the mapping tool. But essentially, the consumer, what they would do is click on this blue arrow at the top here to drill down to where their house is. And then once they see the top of their household, they would click to drop this pin on their home address. And again, we just wanted to reiterate something that's really important is that for the enhanced tribal benefit, because consumers are required to live on tribal lands to qualify for that benefit, we utilize the information that the consumer provides for their home address to confirm that they live on qualifying tribal lands. And so if a consumer gets to this point in the process and they live on tribal land, or really anyone who encounters this, it's really important that they really take the time to pinpoint their exact location. But for tribal consumers, if, for example, the tribal lands are here and they select the pin drop over here, that will affect whether they end up qualifying for the tribal benefit. So it's really critical that they do zoom into their household location and drop the pin as closely to their house as possible. So for the next area that we may ask them to confirm their information would be around their identity information. Again, not all consumers will need to take these steps, but we wanted to show you what a consumer would need to do if they do encounter them in their application. So for this consumer, we need them to confirm their date of birth is correct because we couldn't confirm it in that database check that we did. And so to do that, again, Nancy is asked to review her information. If she says, oh my gosh, I entered in the date of my year wrong, she can go back and fix it by clicking this link. But let's say the information is accurate. To resolve this, what she would need to do is upload a copy of an official document that has her first and last name and her date of birth on it. It does need to be unexpired, I should say. So a common example of that document might be like a driver's license, for example. So to do that, she would choose File, select the file, and then from there, she would get a button to upload and to upload the file. From there, the consumer will select Next. On this next screen, this is what a consumer would see if they need to confirm that they qualify. A consumer will encounter this if we couldn't verify their eligibility. So similar to earlier in the process, they will again need to indicate how they are seeking to qualify. So let's say, for example, this consumer participates in the SNAP program. They would select SNAP, and then they need to provide a document that includes their first and last name, the name of the program. So in this example, it would need to say SNAP or food stamps, because some states still refer to the program as food stamps instead of SNAP. It would also need to include the agency who issued the document, whether it's a government or tribal program administrator or possibly a managed care organization. But the key here is that it needs to have the name of the agency who issued that document. And then it also needs to have a date that's within the last 12 months, or it needs to have a future expiration date. This is all needed because at the time that a consumer applies, we need to be able to verify that they are actively participating in the program that they've indicated here. And so next, you would just choose that file again, upload it, and then click Next. So this is the final step in the online application process where the consumer would need to review all of these statements. After reviewing the statements, they would affirm their agreement by entering in their initials. So in this example, Nancy George was a consumer who submitted the application. So she would enter in NG here. And then finally, after agreeing to all of the certifications, she would need to enter in her first and last name to sign the application. And then as a final step, would just need to click this checkbox below, confirming that she understands that by typing her signature here, that it serves as her digital signature. And as a last step, she would just need to click Submit. So after doing that, if a consumer did have to provide documentation during the application process, they will likely receive this page, which just tells them we're reviewing their documentation. In many cases, documentation that's submitted online is reviewed within a matter of minutes. But in some cases, it may take us a little bit longer. So the consumer can either stay on this page and refresh it or come back and log into their account at any time. And then the next page is what the consumer will see. We've broken it up a little bit here. Normally, it would just be the length of the page, if you will. But this is what the consumer would see after their application has been approved. And really the critical information here is that it shows them the next steps that they need to take to start receiving the benefit. So after a consumer has applied and been approved, the next step is signing up with a service provider. The service provider needs to enroll them in the program for them to start receiving the benefit. So we have instructions here for consumers depending on whether they already receive internet service and need to contact their current provider, or if they perhaps need to shop around for a new provider. And here on the right-hand side, you'll see we do recommend that consumers make note of this information because when a provider is enrolling them in the program, this information will be really helpful to help ensure that the information they're providing to enroll them is consistent with what they provided on their application. And we have this information expanded here, but the consumer will also see this confirm tribal qualification button on the qualify page. Once they click that, they'll see the information in this green box below. And they can check this to see if, based on the information they provided for their home address, whether they qualify for the enhanced tribal benefit. In this example, the consumer does not live on tribal land, so they're not eligible for the enhanced benefit. But this could be really useful for consumers who have, completed their application and they want to check right away whether they may qualify for that $75 a month. On the next screen here, sorry, it looks like I'm unable to proceed. Yep, here we go. This just brings us back to that consumer dashboard. And so again, you've seen that, this is still under Nancy's account. We can see that her application that she just submitted is here, when it was created, when it expires. So this is the date that she needs to get enrolled by. On the qualify page, I didn't mention that, but we also share that date on that notice to the consumer. And then again, just the qualified status. If she'd like to go back to that page, she can click qualified and get back to that information. And just as a final point in my portion of the presentation, we just wanted to flag that we do have a dedicated ACP support center. Consumers can email our support center at acpsupport@usac.org or call. Our support center is open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And now, Linda, I will pass it back to you.
Thank you, Tiffany. A special thanks to Derik, Olivia, and Tiffany for such informative presentations. Now, I told you we were bringing a fire today. So joining us to answer your questions today is Jamile Kadre. She is an attorney advisor on the Affordable Connectivity Program team in the Telecommunication Access Policy Division of the FCC Wireless Competition Bureau. She previously worked in the Industry Analysis Division of the FCC Media Bureau, where she focused on media ownership, competition, merger review, broadcast, and cable regulations. So now I'm going to turn it over to Nelson and our guest speakers for this question and answer segment. Nelson, I bet you have a ton of questions out there for us.
Yes, we do have questions, Linda. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you fine.
Great. This question may be for Tiffany. Paper applications are still accepted, correct? And for the description of the process, is it a lot slower for paper applications? How long might it take if somebody has to verify their exact physical address, et cetera? What might be the time frame?
Thank you, Nelson. Yes, paper applications are still absolutely accepted. We do recommend that if a consumer would like to apply through the mail, though, that they go ahead and provide documentation up front to help speed up their application. If they would choose not to, that's okay. They can submit their application and USAC will notify them by mail about the status of their application. So if after reviewing their application, we need them to submit more documentation, we will send a letter in the mail letting them know documentation that they need to provide. Because of the mail process, it can take quite some time, depending on where a consumer lives, to both receive that application and send out a notice. Of course, as soon as we receive an application, our agents are reviewing it, and our notices will go out right away. But because of, it takes some time for the mail to be delivered, it does take much longer than if a consumer, has the ability to apply online.
Great, thank you. And then earlier in the presentation, it was mentioned that no credit checks are required for the application process for ACP. How do past due bills with a provider impact the application process? An unpaid past due bill.
It's a separate, that unpaid bill is not a factor for the Affordable Connectivity Program, but that is still something that the consumer needs to resolve with that company, but that is separate from enrollment in ACP. And it will not be used to stop a person from enrolling in ACP, even with that same provider.
Great, and sort of related, I think it was you, Olivia, mentioned the 90-day protection against disconnection. If somebody falls behind, could they go to one other provider?
Yeah, you can. Yes, you can switch providers, but again, it doesn't mean you don't owe your current provider money. It just becomes a separate track. but really, hopefully what it can do is give, because there are providers that have products that are essentially free, that are $30 and below or $75 and below for those on tribal lands. The hope there is that the consumer will, enroll in one of those products until they're more economically stable, or perhaps, those products will meet their needs so they won't lose connectivity at any point.
So to clarify, you can sign up for ACP and find a program that will be covered by your benefits so that you don't have anything out of pocket, unless you add on bells and whistles, right?
I think it will, yes, that is the theory if there are participating providers that have packages at those price points. But there was an announcement at the White House a few months ago that many of the major internet service providers were creating these special, at this price point package. So hopefully for most consumers, they can find a product totally covered by the ACP benefit.
That's great, thank you. And then there's a question here about, is there any benefit for someone who was homeless? The question is, it had been my understanding that the EBB allowed for folks who were homeless that they could still apply even if they did not have a home address. They used the mapping tool to do that, I thought. Is that still true? If so, what do they use as their home address?
So a consumer,
Go ahead, go for it.
I was just going to say that consumers who are experiencing homelessness are absolutely still eligible to apply for their home address. They would just indicate where they are physically residing, and we understand that that might be a descriptive address that they provide, or possibly a shelter. So hopefully, and Olivia, if you had additional feedback to add on that, please do.
I just wanted to note that is a characteristic of the Lifeline program, which I had mentioned before, as well as the Affordable Connectivity Program. These programs were designed so that they could also be available to some of the most vulnerable members of our communities, those who don't have stable housing. And so you don't need a fixed brick and mortar address to qualify. So that's one of the strengths of these programs. You will have to get very familiar with, of course, the application process. But as I noted, the Lifeline application and the Affordable Connectivity Benefit application are very similar. So hopefully it's not, too much investment of time to get familiar with those processes so that you can help folks apply.
Is someone who is homeless likely to have to go to a wireless provider and find out about a service that they can take with them wherever they may be? Would that be the likely, and how easy might that be to find?
There are a lot of wireless broadband providers in the Lifeline and Affordable Connectivity programs. I think it really does depend on the circumstance of the individual, but if they are not likely to have a stable shelter for a prolonged period of time, mobile broadband may make the most sense, and perhaps stacking Lifeline and ACP may make the most sense, so a much better, hopefully, data plan for those combined benefits.
Great, thank you. And then Derik, you mentioned a couple of pilots earlier, as well as the upcoming grant opportunity. Are the pilots currently open for applications? How can people find out more?
So those pilots have just been announced. Jamile, do you know if the application process is open?
Yeah, I can take that. So it is not open yet. I would advise folks to stay tuned. There'll be more information coming via public notice.
Is there, where should they, if you give me an exact web address, I can type it into the chat where they can be checking?
Sure. So when that happens, there will be a web page that will go live that's specific to the program, but that is not currently live. The programs, plural. But you can go to fcc.gov, and there should be an announcement on the main page when this happens.
Okay, excellent. And then in terms of Derik and maybe Jamile too, the FCC is looking for outreach partners. Are there particular states where the need is highest that you know about for this program already, or based on what we know about Lifeline, in terms of what areas need the most outreach?
I can speak concerning tribal communities. I know for sure when I mentioned the grant outreach program, when that application process was announced where they will prioritize communities with low ACP enrollment rates, tribal communities are those communities specifically mentioned in that order. So, for example, the Navajo Nation, where I'm from, they have low ACP enrollment rates. I know that many reservations across the Mountain West and the Pacific Northwest, they have low ACP enrollment rates. By state, I'm not certain. I'm not sure if Jamile, you have any information about by state the ACP enrollment rates.
So I really can't, as I did not get into the specifics, I'm happy to follow up on that question a little further, because I think the general rule of thumb of what you mentioned, Derik, applies of, whether there's lower enrollment versus potential eligibility in the communities. But I can't sort of call out off the top of my head certain states, but happy to discuss that further offline with interested folks.
Sure, if you have any information for us, we can share it with participants. Also, is there, I don't know if anyone mentioned it today, but is there a minimum speed in terms of internet speed that qualifies as broadband? And are most providers reaching it or exceeding it by some level? Or where is that going? And anyone can chime in on that.
Sorry, I was having difficulty unmuting. So for the program, we did not set a minimum speed requirement. There's sort of a sense of having a high quality connection. And then, we take in consumer complaints if folks have issues, of course, with the provider and follow through with that. But there's not these requirements in particular.
So it's not going to be gig speed necessarily, but maybe it would be. We don't know.
It does depend on the provider's offerings, and the plans are intended. The goal of the program is to allow sort of consumers to choose what's best based on their needs. So say, you may want to go for a plan that is fully covered, that has different features than a more expensive plan, so that that consumer feels that they, based on their needs, they'd rather go for this fully covered $30 plan versus a more expensive plan that has different features. So I think that flexibility was important to folks, because that's part of the consumer protections are allowing consumers to choose the plans that are best for them.
Great.